India's startup ecosystem has slowed, with the number of unicorns declining for the very first time since 2017. According to the Hurun Global Unicorn Index 2024 launched on Tuesday, the slowdown came despite recent stock market record highs, while one factor was that Indian founders produced more offshore unicorns than any other country. According to the report, Indians, in fact, co-founded 109 unicorns outside of India in comparison to just 67 within India. Now, as per Hurun's previous year's Unicorn Index, it reported 68 unicorns in India in 2023 and 2254 in 21 and 21 in 2022 and 2019. So although the number looks higher when compared to previous year, it is in fact slowing down. What is happening? Why is the startup ecosystem, one that we keep talking about, is slowing down, or at least showing signs of slowdown?
So, I think unfair right now to categorically state that the startup sector is slowing down. What is really slowing down are the high valuations that they once commanded. And incidentally, India going from 68 to 67 comes on account of exactly one startup, which was once not just a unicorn, not just a decacorn, but a decacorn twice over and then some more. I'm talking about Byju's. So, Byju's fall from over $22 billion worth of valuation to under $1 billion of valuation seems to be the only company, the only startup unicorn which has dropped off the Hurun list between last year and this year. But the trend is fairly similar even if you look at countries like Australia, Sweden, UAE. Which have all been known as startup hubs of the world. They've also incidentally all lost about one unicorn each from their list. Now, the unfortunate part is that we don't really have any decacorns right now. And the problem with that again is the fact that there have been valuation cuts across startups all through, right from Swiggy and Zomato, which eventually got listed, to Dream11, to multiple other companies which were commanding the $10 billion and higher status of decacorns, seem to have fallen off the decacorn grid, but still happen to be in the unicorn list. Now, let's just try and look at some of these numbers and let's look at what this data really tells us. So, India has, of course, added in the space of artificial intelligence, India has added one unicorn. And that unicorn happens to be Krutrim. And Krutrim is run by Ola, in fact, founded by Ola's co-founder, Bhavish Agarwal. But overall, AI seems to be pretty much the trend. And leading the pack in the AI journey are, no surprise there again, countries including US and China, with US registering the highest number of AI-driven unicorns, not just AI-driven startups, but AI-driven unicorns, and China being a close second. India does not feature very highly in that list. However, India still continues to be the third largest unicorn producer in the world. Again, third only to US, which is leading the pack, and China, which is a distant second. So these are some of the themes which are emerging. I think it's also important to highlight at this point that while $1 billion valuations are fairly exciting, and by virtue of becoming a unicorn and getting that stamp of being a large company, a well-to-do unicorn, and I'm not even talking about profitability and revenue right now, I'm just talking about pure valuations. While we do get excited about unicorn or even about decacorn as a status symbol to India's unicorns, India is still well below the top 3 largest unicorns out there. And which are these on your screen right now? Number 1 on that list is ByteDance, the owner being, of course, a Chinese founder, but ByteDance, the founding company, ByteDance, the founding company of TikTok, is squarely number 1 on that overall list of the highest valued unicorns. And just look at the mammoth size of value that it commands. Number 2 on that list is SpaceX, Elon Musk's own reusable rocket platform product, where you're literally looking at rocket science and breaking it down to influence space tourism in going years, and also cutting down on the cost of space travel. $180 billion, that's 180 times a unicorn over, right? And number 3 on that list, and incidentally, I was hoping that this year, the numbers would have improved in favor of this company, but number 3 on this list is OpenAI. Sam Altman being the CEO, but incidentally, again, the primary investors in OpenAI, the project when it started, was Elon Musk and Sam Altman, whereas the brainchild was of Greg Brockman. But $100 billion valuation is what OpenAI commands at the moment. Now, overall, in this entire mix, I think what really is a troubling fact, especially from India's perspective is something that you mentioned in your introduction, Shweta, that while there are 67, one down from 68 last year, unicorns, Indian unicorns in that list of close to about 1,500 odd unicorns across the world, 191 Indian origin founders have started companies which have ended up becoming unicorns, but those unicorns are not registered in India.
Why is that so? Is that a trend that one should be worried about, that Indian founders are going abroad to register their companies?
Yeah, I think it is more than a worrying trend. I think it is definitely a very disheartening trend because what entrepreneurs at the end of the day look for is maximization of shareholder value. And shareholders in their cases are investors. And when investors want returns on their capital, startups want lesser compliance burden. And India, unfortunately, even though there are marginal improvements in the ease of doing business ranking for India, India still has very difficult compliances. For example, if you as an individual or as a company want to remit outside the shores of India, anything more than the LRS prescribed $250,000 per year, and $250,000 is $250 million. So anything more than $250 million worth of remittances outside need RBI clearances. So, you know, entrepreneurs find it much easier to do business if their companies are registered, headquartered in countries like Singapore or countries like UAE, where the compliance burden is much lower. Right. And at the same time, they continue to be headquartered or run their operations out of India, and Bangalore and Gurgaon being the key two cities which continue to attract startup talent and startup businesses. But in addition to that, you know, what startups are now beginning to fear, and these startups which had registered their companies abroad, what they're starting to fear now, given India's capital market, the stock markets giving tremendous returns and the IPO sector doing really well, what they seem to now be missing out on is listing their companies in the Indian stock markets. And Indian capital regulations don't permit foreign registered entities to list on the Indian markets, unlike NASDAQ, which encourages companies from across the world to come and list. Now, for these Indian origin startups which are not registered in India to reap the dividends of the Indian capital markets, they need to re-register in India. So that is a phenomenon called reverse flipping, which is becoming quite prevalent right now. But again, I was talking about compliance burden and ease of doing business issues with startups. Now the Indian government wants to go ahead and retrospectively tax startups which want to move their registered offices from outside India back to India. And they say, you've profited all these years without being registered in India and denied us the opportunity of making revenue. Even though you continue to do business in India, now we need to tax you to come back to India before you end up enjoying the returns of the IPO market.
All right, and how feasible will that be for startups to either comply or to give in to is, of course, is going to be a big question mark. But as far as Hurun's list of unicorns is concerned, India at number 3, the delta between number 2 and number 3, of course, is way higher, with China taking the second spot and the US at the first spot.